As a coach, there are plenty of times where I'm talking to a client who thinks that they're dealing with an avoidant, and it actually becomes pretty apparent that they're dealing with a narcissist. And it goes the other way around too, where they think that they're dealing with a narcissist, but it becomes apparent that they're dealing with somebody who's just severely avoidantly attached. Other coaches have similar experiences as well. So how does narcissism actually factor into attachment? Now, narcissists are avoiders, but they don't all show up as dismissive avoidants. They don't all behave like people with avoidant attachment. There are quite frequently overlaps in behavior. Things like stonewalling, gaslighting, creating distance, disappearing, ghosting. A lot of these behaviors can absolutely overlap, and these overlapping behaviors are what can confuse people. However, there are very distinct narcissistic patterns and behaviors, and the intent is vastly different. There's been a lot of research on narcissism and attachment, and not all narcissists really show up in the same way. There does not seem to be a definitive attachment style associated with narcissists. Some can show up almost behaving like anxious attachers, very controlling, very needy. Some can show up seemingly avoidant, very distant, very cold, very vague. However, narcissists go into a relationship seeking one thing: narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply is the attention, affirmation, validation, and power and control that a narcissist feels entitled to. The way that they behave attachment-wise in a relationship is really just their angle to get that supply, and primarily to exert power over their partner, to elevate themselves into the power position in the relationship. Some will use overtly controlling behaviors that can come across quite anxious, while some narcissists will use more passive-aggressive behaviors that come across more avoidant. But the intent is always the same with the narcissist, is to get the attention and power and control. The narcissist always needs to be in the power position in any relationship, and each individual narcissist learns different techniques to obtain that power, which is why attachment and narcissism is not very definitive. The research on it has not pinpointed one particular attachment style. And it doesn't seem that narcissists even really necessarily have an attachment style the way that other people do, because the narcissist's goal is vastly different than somebody who is either securely attached or insecurely attached. People that have an attachment style, whether it's secure or insecure being avoidant or anxious, they all want love. They want to be loved. They want to feel seen, validated, heard in a relationship. People with insecure attachments have fear that also plays into their behavior. Fears of abandonment, rejection, fears of confrontation, things of the sort. And those fears can affect how they show up. Avoidant behavior, anxious behavior, it's based off of fear. And the primary fear that motivates both of those insecure attachments is abandonment. Narcissistic behavior is not based on fear. But that said, narcissists are avoiders. Let me explain. Narcissists have a lot of deep inner shame and pain, tons of it. Deep down, they are very unhappy, shame-filled people. But they don't want to face that. They want to avoid it. So they create the false self. The false self is the image of themselves that they present to the world. They even convince themselves that their false self is who they really are. And their false self is always this perfect person that does no wrong. When they do something bad, when they hurt somebody else, it's always somebody else's fault. It's never theirs. Accountability would shatter their false self. But this false self is designed to help them avoid confronting that inner pain, to avoid confronting and acknowledging the inner shame. Getting that supply, getting that attention, getting that power, getting that control, it helps them feel good and they can avoid that inner pain. They are avoiders, but they don't show up as dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant, not in the traditional sense. Narcissists, they can actually enjoy seeing their partner hurting because it means they have power over this person, that they can affect them. Somebody who is simply a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant, they don't get pleasure out of hurting somebody else. Now, they can hurt somebody due to their own selfishness and their own insecurities, but that's not their goal. And narcissists do frequently use things like triangulation, using a third party against their partner to manipulate them. Narcissists will also routinely isolate their partners from family and friends and their support network. That's not something that insecurely attached people tend to do. And narcissists, especially after a divorce where there's children involved, will also try to frequently alienate the other parent from the children. Again, that's not something that dismissive avoidance, fearful avoidance, or anxious attachers tend to do. Narcissists are much more vindictive and punishing. That's why they use the silent treatment. When an avoidant goes quiet, they're stonewalling, they're shut down because they're overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. They get to the point where their nervous system is on fire and they have a hard time articulating words. But it's not to punish the other person. A narcissist is using the silent treatment to punish and get the other person to submit and bend to their will. So, narcissists can show up in various different ways, and some of them can appear anxious, but that's just how they've learned to control the other person. Same thing with the narcissists who appear avoidant. They are learning to control their partner by using avoiding techniques, distancing techniques that can often appear dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant, but they're really not. Narcissism, it generally is much more cruel, much more cold, much more calculating, much more vengeful, and much more spiteful and hurtful than any insecure attacher ever would be. There are differences. Insecurely attached people can heal, they can change, they can become secure. A narcissist does not change, and that might be the most important difference of all.